This week, my guest is Jane Adkins. Jane is a head for PR is her company. And PR, I'm not sure what PR is all about, but I have Jane here sat next to me. And Jane, welcome.
Thank you very much, Colin. Lovely to be here.
A head for PR, what on earth does that mean?
Basically, it just means that I like to help businesses and organisations get a sort of raise their profile, if you like, and predominantly through getting them pieces in newspapers and magazines, actually getting them on the radio or TV and across social media. So really, it's all about sort of being able to promote their products, but in an interesting and newsy way. So PR is more about concentrating on the angle, really. Rather than, if you like, having a sort of advert placed. It's about sort of finding the newsy angle in what the company does. So, you know, really, for example, you know, if you're an accountant, you might think, well, that's quite a difficult thing to PR. But in fact, you know, you would look and see whether or not there was a particular thing that they specialised in, something that they might want to comment on, you know, key things during the course of the year, like the budget and what Brexit means, for example, for small businesses, or sort of anything to do with employment and that side of things. You'd be able to put them up as a media spokesman to the paper, to the business correspondent, and say, you know, we've actually got something interesting to say about this. And that's really basically what PR is about, is spotting the angle that's appropriate for the business.
What does PR stand for?
Oh, it stands for public relations. I suppose it's one of those things where you're so used to saying the word PR and you forget that a lot of people just don't really know what it means. But it used to be, used to be a definition, I think, that said it was all about reputation. And that's really still true for today, but I think it's expanded so much more now with social media being around. So it's about handling all the way that a company is perceived by its audience, by its target audience.
And how long have you been going?
So my business, the Head for PR, has been going now for nearly 8 years. I set it up, I think, back in 2009. And previously to that, I'd worked for a full-service PR agency based in Somerset. So I've been doing it for quite a long time,
Quite a while, really.
Yeah, quite a while.
And now, so the company's growing strong and you've got several associates that you work with.
That's right. So I've got a slightly different business model, I suppose, from a lot of PR agencies. I'm home office based, but because I've been doing it for such a long time, I'm able to sort of pick on different people where appropriate for a particular client. So, for example, I do quite a lot in the travel and tourism and food and drink sectors. And so I've got associates that I can work with.
So do you specialise at all in particular sectors?
I suppose, if anything, yeah, it would be travel and tourism, as I say, food and drink, lifestyle. But having said that, I do business to business. And for example, you know, there's an accountant that I work with and a dentist and a photographer. So, yeah, pretty broad ranged, really.
Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure to have you, Jane. And as you know, we choose half a dozen of our Desert Island discs. And what's your first song?
Well, I thought Yellow, actually, because Chris Martin, as we know, went to Sherburn Boys School, and I also do the PR for Sherburn Tourism. So I thought that would be an appropriate one to kick off with.
Let's have a listen. Jane, where were you born?
I was actually born in London, but didn't stay there for very long. My parents moved to Essex, so I guess you could say I am an Essex girl. We moved to a little place just outside Southend-on-Sea, and so I grew up by the sea, actually.
Southend's a lovely place. They've got this pier that's like a mile and an eighth long.
Longest pier in the world, allegedly.
Really?
Yeah, that's right. Spent many a happy time walking down the pier to the bowling alley at the end, and misspent youth spent bowling and having a nice time. It used to be a Mods and Rockers venue really in the 60s, although I was very young, of course, in the 60s, so I didn't actually take part in that. But they used to get all the Mods and Rockers down from London, and it was quite a vibrant place.
It sounds fun. Brothers, sisters?
Do you know, I haven't got any brothers and sisters, sadly, but it's probably why I've got 3 children, though, and that was one of the reasons why I had 3 children, because I quite miss not having brothers and sisters.
Sporty?
Sporty, that's an interesting one. It's what my friends would fall over laughing. Sporty is probably not a word that they would put in the same sentence as my name. But when I was younger, one sport I was good at was swimming. And so I actually swam for the county at one point. And
Really?
so I was a good swimmer. So, yeah, sporty from the swimming point of view.
And brainy.
Oh, well, not really. But
Did you do any work?
so, yeah, I mean, I used to work relatively hard at school, I suppose. And I went to our local grammar school, which is a big thing in those days. You had to take the 11 plus, and there weren't many that went from my school. So
Well, I
was
failed
lucky.
my 11 plus. Presumably you passed it.
I passed it, yeah. But went to an all-girls grammar school in Southend, and I think, gosh, they gave me pretty good education, actually, pretty good start in life. And
A-levels?
did A-levels, yes. I did English, history and French, and then went off to university.
Ah.
Yeah.
To study what?
Well, to study, not being particularly creative in my choice, probably. So I did English and history.
English and history at university?
Yeah, joint.
You've got to be brainy to do that.
I don't know so much. I don't know about brains. I was down in Swansea, and all I can say is I had a wonderful time. Had 3 really good years in Swansea. Some of the best beaches, spent
The Mumbles, isn't it?
The
Down the
Mumbles,
Mumbles.
yeah. Used to go down to the places where Dylan Thomas allegedly used to hang out, and we were there during the summer of 75 and 76, which I don't know if you remember. But
76 is when the sun
best.
came out and never went in again.
Exactly.
That was my first summer in London, so you were in Swansea at the same time.
I was. Made the most of the beaches on the Gower. Fantastic times.
And came out with a degree?
Came out with a degree, believe it or not, having spent all that time sunbathing. Got a 2-1 degree, and then went on to City University. So then it was back to the smoke, back to where I was
City
born.
University, Angel Islington.
That's the one.
It is. Well, we'll find out more about that. But your second song.
So my second song is going to be Neil Diamond's Crackling Rosie, because I spent a lot of time in my teens listening to this with my friends, and we used to do dance routines to it. So why not, I thought.
Why not? What happened at City University?
So at City University, I was lucky enough to get on their postgrad journalism course. So that's where I was really given the idea and taught how to be a journalist.
And had you had ideas of journalism before?
Yes, I suppose I had. I'd always enjoyed writing, and wrote for the local Swansea magazine. Ended up doing a short stint on the South Wales Evening Post in Swansea, honing my journalism skills, which was fun. But didn't really want to go out to regional newspapers when I finished the course. And amazingly, I was really lucky to get a job with Thompson Magazines in London. And the way I got that job was just through a chance meeting at a bus stop.
Hang on a second. So you've gone to City University.
Yep.
So you're doing the degree there.
And that's right.
But you need to get a job as well.
Needed to get a job once I'd finished that.
So how
that
long
year's
was
course.
City University?
So that was a year.
Oh, so 1 year.
Absolutely, yeah.
So a postgrad diploma course
Exactly, a diploma, yeah.
in journalism.
Yes.
What does that entail?
So it just entails learning about things like essential law for journalists.
Essential?
Law.
Oh, law.
So you had to cover things because it was at the time geared at newspaper journalists, and there was a slight broadcast element to it, specialist publications. But it's about learning how to write, knowing what to write as a journalist, asking those key questions: who, what, why, when, where, how, that sort of thing. But also knowing the law. Sort of doing, in those days, I have to say shorthand. So I had to learn T-line. I eventually managed to do 110 words a minute. So I'm very proud of that.
Is that,
actually.
sorry, shorthand?
Yes, so shorthand.
So T-line, what's that mean?
So it was the alternative thing to Pitman's. So which is another shorthand sort of craft, if you like. But T-line is something that they used to teach to journalists in those days. I don't know, probably people don't need it nowadays because you can record interviews and things. But I still like doing it and squiggle away on bits of paper when I'm talking to people. And they can't understand what I've written, so it's great.
Lovely. So you finish your postgrad diploma and then something about a bus stop.
Yes. So while I was still on the course, actually, I was late going to one of the courts where they used to make us go along to a court and report on it. And I was late because the bus just didn't arrive. And I was chatting to a chap who was standing at the bus stop with me. And he said, "So where are you off to?" So I told him. And we had a little chat. And then the bus came round the corner. And he just sort of said to me, "Oh, before you go, I'll give you my card." And I thought, "Oh, card, goodness." And he turned out to be a publisher, an editor, group editor, and he said, "Send my secretary," because they had secretaries in those days, "and send your details to my secretary, and I think there might be a job for you at the end of the course." And there was. So amazingly, I ended up as assistant editor on a magazine, not very exciting, called Print Buyer. And that's where I started my journalistic career,
and
really.
this was Thompson's publishing?
Yeah, part of Thompson's in Goswell Road.
So you're in London, in Goswell Road, in a flat in Diggs?
So, no, I actually lived in East Finchley, actually, with a whole bunch of friends. We all shared a house together, as you did in those days.
Yeah.
So, continuing the student lifestyle to a certain extent. But, yeah, having a really good time.
So in London, first job, Thompson Publishing, met a man at a bus stop.
Exactly.
And then you met a good friend.
I met a very good friend, actually. I moved on from Print Buyer to the heady heights of a packaging magazine. And who should I meet at this packaging magazine but the editor of a magazine called Milling, my very good friend Jackie.
Jackie.
Yes.
And it just turns out that Jackie's spending the weekend with you.
It just turns out she's spending the weekend with us, yes.
And well, we're going to have your next song. And then after we've done that, I think we might say hello to Jackie. Your next song.
So my next song is sort of linked to Jackie because it's something I used to play when I used to go and visit her several years later, actually. But it simply reads, "Money's Too Tight to Mention."
Jane has got a degree, gone to London, got herself a job meeting a bloke at a bus stop. And then she meets her good friend Jackie. And I'm very fortunate. Jackie, welcome to my show.
Nice to be here. Unexpected, but nice.
Well, it's always good to have someone pop in. But Jackie, you've got a very interesting career, I believe, now.
Well, yes, I have. I work as a bone marrow transplant coordinator in London at UCH, one of the big teaching hospitals.
University College Hospital.
That's right, in central London. And I work with, now I work with the patients who are undergoing transplants, so having cells from other people. And also from themselves. It depends. There's different types of transplant. But up until December, I ran the donor service at UCH. So I was involved in seeing people who either voluntarily had put themselves on a national register to donate stem cells to somebody. It's called the Anthony Nolan Register. Or patients who we had at the hospital who had related donors, so they had brothers or sisters who were a match for them. So I would look after all of them and do all of the investigations that were required to ensure that it was safe both for them to donate cells and also for the patients to receive those stem cells.
Why would someone have a bone marrow transplant?
Primarily, most often it's because of leukemia, but you also do bone marrow transplants for other blood conditions, so lymphomas. You also do them for myelomas, which is something, it's an illness that is not widely known about. But then also people who are born with genetic problems, so babies, for example, who are born without working immune systems. And what you can do is you can basically treat the person, you destroy that person's ability to create any blood for themselves, because the blood that they are creating is not working in some form. And if you do that, you then replace the stem cells that were previously creating their blood by stem cells from somebody else, which then take over the function of producing normal blood for them.
Wow, sounds a fascinating
It
job.
is.
Anyway,
It is.
I'm more interested in gossip on Jane, actually.
Okay.
So how did you meet? How did the two of you meet?
So we met when we were both working as editors on trade magazines. It was a company called Turret Press, and it was based in North Finchley in London. And I rather luckily had got myself a job as an editor without really having very much experience of anything to do with magazine publishing, but I managed to get myself in, and I worked on a publication called Milling, which was an agricultural publication. It was really for flour millers. It was related to flour milling.
So you can buy a magazine for flour milling.
Well, you could if you knew where to get it, and people did. It actually went all over the world. And Jane was working on packaging, which was obviously another trade magazine, and we just met in the offices and just hit it off. We were about the same age. We just hit it off and just had great fun, really.
And stayed in contact
And
ever
stayed
since?
in contact, apart from a few gaps, sort of a few years in the middle of sort of after that period. But yes, basically we've remained very, very good friends throughout.
Fantastic. It's
Yeah.
lovely. Well, welcome to pop into our show.
Thank
Choose me
you.
a song. Let's have a song from you.
So I've always been a big fan of Lighthouse Family, and one of my favourite songs is Ocean Drive.
And I believe it's one of your favourites.
It is, because it was playing when my grandson was born, so I love it.
Ocean Drive. Jackie, as that was playing, she was telling me that she sticks needles in people and actually extracts the bone marrow. I believe that's correct.
That's right. That's right. So if you need to collect stem cells from a donor, you can do it one of two ways. The first way, the traditional way of doing it, that people still assume is the only way that it's done, is to give the donor a general anaesthetic, and while they're asleep, you basically put a relatively large needle into the
What
top
does
of the hip
relatively
bone.
large mean? Like 6 inches?
Well, lengthwise, yes, it's probably about 6 inches, but that's not really so relevant to the donor because they're fast asleep. They don't feel anything. But you put the needle into the top of the hip bone, you go through the bone and into the middle of the bone where the bone marrow is. You're doing it both sides, so you'll have a doctor and a clinical nurse specialist, which is what I am. The other side, you'll be doing it simultaneously. You go into the bone marrow, you extract 20 mils each time. You attach a syringe and you extract some bone marrow, and you do that repeatedly. You make 3 or 4 little holes in the bone marrow until you get up to 1.5 litres of bone marrow, but contained within blood. But the donor is completely asleep, feels nothing. They wake up, it takes about half an hour, and when they go back to the ward, they're absolutely fine. A little bit sore, a little bit of paracetamol, but they stay in hospital that night and then they're discharged the next day and they're fine. It takes a little while, it takes a week or so to get over the tiredness and a slight soreness, but they're fine. Their body just replaces the
And you
stem
say there's
cells.
another way now?
So the more common way now is to actually extract it from the bloodstream, which for the donor it's a bit more donor friendly. It gives you very good counts. You get good counts of stem cells, which is very beneficial for the patient. And you have to just give the donor an injection every day for 4 days preceding the collection day. They then come in and they have a needle in each of their arms, and their blood is run through a cell separator, which extracts the stem cells and returns everything back to the donor that we don't need, so the rest of their blood. And it is a life-saving thing for a donor to do. It's amazing. Those cells will be given to the patient and hopefully it will save their lives.
So anyone listening that says, I'm happy to do that,
Absolutely,
what would they do?
absolutely.
Where do you go?
So the most common way to do it is to just Google Anthony Nolan. If they just put Anthony Nolan into Google, it will bring up the website for the Anthony Nolan, which is the biggest UK registry for volunteer donors, and they just contact them. They put their details in. The Anthony Nolan will send them a pot which they spit into and then send it back, and from that spit they can extract the tissue typing that is needed in order to match a donor and a patient. And it is that simple. And if they are young and male, and particularly from an ethnic minority, they are hugely in demand. For the donor, it's a safe, simple procedure to go through, but it will actually save somebody's life. So if anybody out there is interested in joining the register, it's an amazing thing to do.
So you just Google Anthony Nolan.
Yep, or alternatively, if you're a blood donor, the British Bone Marrow Registry is allied to the Blood Transfusion Service. You can also sign up that way.
Lovely. Well, Jackie, thanks for popping in. That's tremendous. So Anthony Nolan, just Google it if you...
Please do. It will save somebody's life.
However, we're back with Jane. And you're in London. You've got your first job and things are going well. So you've got to get from London to somewhere else soon.
Yes, that's a good point, actually. Sort of via several different jobs, I guess. Stayed in journalism for about 10 years, I think, and then crossed the Great Divide into on the other side of the fence, really, and became a press officer. I was the national press officer for Epson, the computer and printer people, and then John Lang Construction, something, again, totally different. But then I got married and really... We decided actually that probably London wasn't where we wanted to bring up children, and so we made the move to the West Country, and that's really why I'm still down here now, so probably 28 years later.
And where's home now then?
So home now is actually in Sherborne, which is just lovely. Love it down here, and it's where we first moved to when we came here, and then we moved to Somerset, but I actually came back here because I just felt so happy here, really.
3 children?
3 children, yes, all grown up now. As I mentioned, I think I've got a couple of grandchildren. They're living in Newcastle, actually, with my eldest son. Long way away, but I try and get up there as often as possible. Then I've got a daughter, Rhiannon, and she's started her own business with her partner, Jamie. I think you had Jamie on the show before.
Jamie Smith Woodworking.
J. Smith Woodwork, that's right. And they're based just outside Corton Denham, and they do bespoke kitchens and woodwork. And my daughter actually is becoming a cabinet maker alongside Jamie. Jamie's got 10 years of experience doing that. And Rhiannon's learning all about it. And plus, she's brilliant at social media as well. They've got great Instagram accounts. So I'm really proud of them both. Really proud. And then my younger son, he's just done his maths degree and he's doing teaching at Goldsmiths at the moment. And he's based in London. So, yeah, I'm proud of all 3 of them.
Fantastic. Well, let's have some more music from you, shall we?
It's got to be Fleetwood Mac's Rhiannon.
My guest this week is Jane Adkins, a head for PR. We've heard Jane's early life, meeting up with a friend, Jackie, who's just introduced us to the Anthony Nolan Foundation and bone marrow. But brought up your children, 3, all eventually went to the Griffin School, old enough, time for a new career, I think.
Yes, that's right. Because when after we moved to the West Country, I actually took some time off from actually proper work, as they say. Though bringing up 3 children is you can't get more proper work than that. But I did have a gap of several years actually while the children were small. And then sort of domestic circumstances, which is a bit of a euphemism for I got divorced when the children were 3, 6 and 8. And it was time to go back to work. And so I couldn't really pursue a career in journalism because journalism doesn't necessarily fit in the hours 9 to 5. And obviously children were at various nursery schools and primary schools. So I had to really try and identify for myself a different sort of career, but something that was sort of closely related. So by chance, really, a job came up. Not
at a bus stop.
Not at a bus stop this time, no, surprisingly not. But funnily enough, in an apple orchard, as it were. But a local PR company were looking for somebody to come along and be an account executive, as they were called in those days. And I applied for the job and was lucky enough to get it. I was really starting from scratch. So it was a case of really sort of building things up. I'd had to do a crash course in computers because when I'd actually left employment, really computers were very, not really the thing. You didn't have to sit there and create press releases on computers. You were still using typewriters. Makes me sound like I'm about 90, but that's the way it was. And so I did a quick course in computers and learnt about, Word, etc. And then was thrown in at the deep end a bit, picking up PR over a number of years, actually. Worked for about 12 years with that particular company.
So as an account manager, I think that's the...
Yeah.
You're given, I don't know, let's say Coca-Cola, which it wasn't, but, but you then
good.
have to go along and just learn their business?
Yeah, I mean, with PR, really, as I say, you can virtually help almost any business or organisation. Lots of charities I've worked with in the past, and I love working with charities. But you're helping them raise their profile, and it's all about a sort of steady drip feed of information. But in order to do that, you do have to go along and do the journalistic bit, really, which is a bit I love doing, finding out about that business. And, it can be virtually anything.
What makes them tick?
Exactly. What makes them tick? And most importantly, really, the things that a journalist is going to find interesting, because that's what you're looking for, because you're looking to ultimately get them that media coverage. Once they've got media coverage, it's something they can then use across social media. They can upload it to their website. Something like today, you get your client onto the radio, and then they can use that interview, and it can be used forevermore. Fairly recently, a couple of years back, helped a locally based Sherburn company who used to run trips abroad for people that were interested in battlefields. And
Battlefield?
Yes, battlefields. Apparently there's a big market out there. People want to go and look at where Battle of the Somme and... it's all very relevant at the moment because it's all the 100-year anniversaries. And I managed to get a journalist that I'd worked with in the past to actually go on one of their trips. And he wrote this piece for the Mail Online, and it appeared in the Mail Online. And apparently it's just been so successful for them because people just Google battlefield trips, and this comes up more or less straight away, Mail Online piece, and it's just created, so much business for them. So that it's kind of, having to look at each individual company and think, right, so what would be of interest to a journalist that they can come along and actually write about what you're doing, and then, as I say, it's all about creating business leads.
So effectively, you go to the business, you sit down with the boss or whoever it is you're dealing with, and you put your journalist hat on, and you're extracting information, a bit like what we're doing now, really.
Except it's on boots on the other foot, yes.
And so you've then got to get that person in front of their customer.
Exactly. And you do that through the media channels. And of course, there are so many different media channels nowadays. So when I say the word media channels, it's a horrible word, isn't it, really?
Let's have a song, and then we're going to talk about media channels, because Tempus Fugit, we've got 10 minutes to go. So your next song.
Absolutely. So this one, just because I love it, Amy Winehouse, Back to Black.
Media channels. I haven't got a clue. What are media channels?
I've done that awful thing which I tell my clients not to do, which is using jargon. And media channels simply means newspapers and magazines and social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, TV and radio. So it's just about using all of those things that can help you push your company message, I guess, but in an interesting and relevant way. And that's the important thing.
And presumably it's horses for courses.
Absolutely.
So you look at a business, I mean, something you're doing, something you're working on at the moment, say you don't have to say the business, but how does that process work?
Well, for example, there is a business that I've just started work with now, and they're based in Devon. Funnily enough, because when I started my business, I won the Visit Devon contract, which I worked with for 3 years.
Visit Devon?
Yeah, so promoting Devon, the destination Devon, which was a fantastic contract to be involved
with, contract.
Actually. Yeah, it was. I was really lucky to get a big contract right at the start. Because I'd had a background, I think I'd worked with Visit Cornwall and Isle of Wight tourism. So I had the right credentials, really, and a lot of contacts in the travel press. And so I've still sort of kept that connection, if you like, with Devon. I've promoted the Devon Tourism Awards. I recently actually was a sponsor for the Southwest Tourism Awards for Best Pub. So that's got to be a good thing to, to promote, isn't it? And I've been involved on the judging side as well, going around to all the sort of restaurants and things. It's been great fun, actually. It's a really nice thing to be able to do. And so back to the business in Devon, it's a place called Gitcombe Cottages. They have got just the most fantastic sort of location. They look out towards Dartmoor, and very sort of high-end sort of converted barns and cottages and a coach house, a beautiful Georgian house. And so I would look at that, and then I've already...
How would you promote them?
I would contact a journalist who writes about travel. I recently, in fact, am talking to Country Child magazine, which is a fairly glossy sort of Dorset-based magazine, and they're actually visiting Gitcombe Cottages later on this month, and they're going to do a write-up for us, and that's what I do. I basically contact the right journalist and say to them, would you be interested in actually going down, and they're doing a piece on a sort of accommodation that you can go to, places you can visit sort of either side of the borders, if you like, across the borders. So they're, as I say, Dorset magazine, but they're going to write about a Devon place.
And then how do you link that into social media nowadays? Because I'm a bit of a novice in this one.
So almost always then a magazine will also have a site, online site. So, take the Western Gazette, for example. They do Somerset Live. So anything that they publish, or more or less anything, you can then link to on their website. So anybody then who's got some coverage can link to that coverage. Maybe they can put it on their own website. They can do it on their social media. So people can then instantly see where they've been written about. And it's getting that third-party endorsement. So that's what PR really does for you. You're getting, an independent endorsement of your product or your location. And that's really what it's about. That's how it works, getting those, and working with bloggers as well.
Bloggers? Bloggers?
So bloggers nowadays are almost more trusted than a piece in the newspaper. Prominent bloggers who write. So they write.
A blogger, just for the listeners, a blogger is
somebody who will have set themselves up independently to write about maybe their lifestyle, to write about a particular subject. And it's like writing a diary. So it's the old-fashioned keeping a diary, if you like, of something that they're interested in, except they create it online.
And
people
these bloggers, read this?
They get huge followings, not all of them, but the key ones, and we kind of know who the key ones are in particular sectors, particular different businesses, who appeals to what. And we contact a blogger in the same way as you would do a journalist and invite them to come and look at a hotel, or invite them to a restaurant, or invite them just to, have a look round a particular business. And that's how it works.
It sounds a tremendously exciting job. I mean, it changes from day to day, doesn't it?
It really does. You never know. You never know what's going to sort of land in your email box and what sort of business you're going to be promoting.
Yeah, and the listeners can't see Jane's face, but you're beaming, you're smiling, you clearly love what you do.
I do, actually. I really love it.
Jane, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show this week. And we know you have one song left, but Jackie, could I just say thank you very much for your contribution. Will, you've been a tremendous producer, as usual. And your last song?
So I think my last song is going to be Will Farrell's Happy. It reminds me of a holiday that I took with my younger son, Howard, and we were in Corsica, and this song was just playing absolutely everywhere we went, and we just had a great week. It was just after he'd finished his finals, and we had a great time.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, and I wish you all the best with a head for PR.
Thank you,
Jane
Colin.
Adkins, thank you.